Most of us don't think about this, but reality is something you're actively creating all the time. Both through your subjective experience, your subjective lens, you're making sense and making meaning of the world based on your past experiences, your values, your beliefs. But then there's also our consensus reality, those structures and systems that we've all bought into and agreed to. And in July, both aspects, the way we see the world and interpret it, as well as the systems we exist within, are undergoing a major change. And when both your inner world paradigms and the systems that you live and exist within are changing shape and shifting beneath your feet, you find yourself in a new reality. And that is where we're headed in July 2026. Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Dana Solara. I'm an astrologer and spiritual coach, and today's talk is all about the astrology of July 2026. In the introduction to this video, I made a pretty big claim that we're stepping into a new reality. And I personally get a little miffed when astrologers get very sensational. And I know that might sound sensational, like a new reality, really, but honestly, that is what I'm picking up from the astrology of this month. It's one of those things where, because we're talking about the outer planets being activated and connecting and teaming up with one another, it's not something that I think we're going to see overnight. It's something that the wheels are getting put into motion in July, and then in August, it's really going to ramp up. But it is definitely the start of something brand new, a brand new structure, a brand new system, both externally as well as internally. And so this is why I'm talking about philosophies, right? Because your philosophies are your internal structures. They are the ways in which you navigate the world, understand what's happening to you, process what's happening to you, and make choices about how you respond. That is on the table for getting changed, right? There is a transformation happening there. And I think we can also say there's a transformation happening in the world. There's a transformation with what we value, with who's in charge. And I think it might be a moment that we look back on in history and say, yeah, that was a turning point. So let's dive in, shall we? I'm going to take you to my Cosmic Witch Astrology Almanac. This is a tool that I built in Notion that doubles as, you guessed it, an astrology almanac, but also an intention and reflection journal, because every page you can open up and type in it, and then you can see I also have my notes in there too. So I think it's pretty cool. But I like showing this view to you as we talk about the month as a whole, because it's kind of nice to just see as text rather than on the chart what's going on for the month. Don't worry, we will also look at the chart. So I have this database set up right now so that we're only looking at focus transits. Just to be clear, there's more happening this month than what is on this screen. But I'm going to take you through the big moments of the month, and then we'll dig deeper into some of the more important shifts that we'll be experiencing. At the beginning of the month, we have a couple of major things happening. The first is Mercury stationing retrograde. We know that's a regular occurrence. It happens 3 times a year, so it's not a huge deal, but it's a focus transit for me because it's happening in Cancer, and as you can see, Jupiter will have just left Cancer. So I think this Mercury retrograde is a really great moment to reflect and integrate on what happened while Jupiter was in Cancer. It's a moment where we can kind of pick up the pieces we left behind and start to braid them together and weave them into something that can help us move forward in a more aligned way. We also have Jupiter entering Leo and immediately squaring Chiron, as well as Mars conjoining Uranus. So Mars is going to enter Gemini, I think on the 29th. Let's see, I just had it on my chart. On the 28th. Okay. Yeah, on the 28th. And so that means that all week long, this Mars conjunct Uranus transit is building. So we've got a lot of different kind of energetic signatures going on here. And these are just the focus transits. I would imagine this is what you're going to notice the most. Okay, so we'll come back and go deeper on all of these. We're just trying to get a big picture of the month. The second week, we're deep in Mercury retrograde still. The sun is squaring Saturn. And then later in the week, Venus will enter Virgo, the sign of her fall. We have our Mercury Cazimi on the 12th. And then we get into, as of the 15th, the major moment of the month, which is known as Barbeau's basket. This is where all of the outer planets are going to be aligned to one another, not including Saturn. Saturn will be in the mix through the lens of the whole sign aspects, but we are actually going to have an exact aspect, degree-based aspect between Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Jupiter. So you can see it starts with Uranus sextiling Neptune on the 15th. On the 18th, Uranus trines Pluto. On the 20th, Jupiter trines Neptune and opposes Pluto. And then on the 21st, Jupiter sextiles Uranus. And then the final moment in this basket situation is on the 25th when Neptune sextiles Pluto. The last thing I want to point out is the sun is going to conjoin Jupiter. This is a Cazimi, a Jupiter Cazimi happening in Leo on the 29th. So what stands out to me when I look at this is the Jupiter story. That Jupiter will, at the beginning of the month, enter a new sign, Leo. Jupiter is going to make contact with all of the outer planets, except for Saturn. Although Jupiter will make contact with Saturn, coming up shortly. And then by the end of the month, Jupiter goes through this rebirth, this Cazimi moment, which is a special conjunction with the sun, and symbolically, it's a renewal. Thinking ahead in August, and I'll just go ahead and show you, this talk isn't about August, but I want to show you what's going to happen. We're going to have a new moon solar eclipse in Leo. Obviously, Jupiter will be in Leo, and then we'll also have an eclipse in Pisces. Jupiter's going to trine Saturn by the end of August. So I just think tracking Jupiter is really helpful and important right now because Jupiter is going to be a part of the eclipses, and we know eclipses are turning points. They are fated moments where things evolve and change at a rapid pace. So if you're looking at this and you're like, this feels like a lot, I want you to maybe set an intention for July to focus on what's going on with Jupiter, because that's going to, I think, give you a breadcrumb trail for what kinds of things are unfolding. Jupiter is also why I'm emphasizing this reshaping our reality. When I think about Jupiter, I don't just think about growth and expansion and abundance. I also think about things like connecting the dots. I think about philosophy. I think about spirituality. These are less talked about manifestations or significations of Jupiter. But anytime Jupiter is involved, we're talking about your operating principles, the philosophies that you use to make sense of the world. I think almost about your subjective filter. We all have one. And the way we interpret reality, it's based on our past experiences, yes, but it's also based on those values and principles that guide our lives. It's how we choose what to do next. And Jupiter is really a planet that signifies those kinds of things. And so let's talk a little bit more about each moment week to week here. Thinking about the first week, and I'm going to actually put Mars conjunct Uranus on the screen for us, because that's, for me, the biggest moment of this week, this first week of July. We've got Mars and Uranus together on July 4th, okay? I'm not even going to, if you're in America, like, you already know. But I do want to say, too, do not be afraid of this, okay? We're never afraid of the astrology. We're always using this tool, astrology that is, as a way to stay present, okay? So what do we think of when we think of Mars? Fighting spirit, go fight, win, defend and protect. This is not just rampant violence for the sake of violence. It's also protecting what needs to be protected. And in Gemini, we're talking about a mutable air sign. So this feels very much like a debate. It feels like an argument. It feels like standing up for something that really matters to you. And Uranus is breakthrough energy. It's innovation. It's the Tower card in tarot, where we have a lightning bolt of insight, and that can really shatter our preconceived notions. But in the wake of that, there's something much more clear and stable. We are talking about a mutable air sign. So I don't know how stable it will feel in this moment. I think of something like hearing a YouTube video or a podcast, or like there's some other person who comes in with an idea or a way of thinking about something that you never heard before. And because it's Mars, it might feel agitating. It might piss you off. There might be some discussion happening that's provoking and activating. But it's also clarifying. I think of that expression, grist for the mill. It gives you this kind of sandpaper energy where it's like, okay, I don't like this. It doesn't feel good necessarily, but there is something clarifying in it, and it helps me feel more clear and stronger about what it is that really matters to me and what I truly think. And so be on the lookout this first week of July for the conversations, the ideas that come through that you're like, I don't know how I feel about that. You might not like it necessarily at first, but it clarifies something for you. Now, of course, at the same time, we have Jupiter and Chiron squaring. So both freshly in new signs. When I think about this square, I first think about Chiron being the wisdom that we're meant to share. We always talk about Chiron as the wounded healer. And yes, but also the wisdom that you're meant to share, because we don't just get hurt to get hurt. The things that we go through in life that are challenging are meant for us to learn and grow from, and then for us to give that back to the collective. That, for me, is what Chiron is about. When I think about Taurus, I think about resource and stability and getting your material needs met. It's also a Venus-ruled sign in the first decan of Taurus, co-ruled by Mercury and Venus. I think about things like lack, mentality, and safety, and understanding what our needs are and getting them met. Meanwhile, Jupiter is in Leo. And so we're talking about expansion, growth, wisdom, perspective, philosophies, spirituality in the domain of the sun, which is all about our spirit, our unique brilliance, our soul, that which lights us up, father figures, authority figures. So I think we're teasing something apart this first week of July about what we need to feel secure and possibly our own limiting beliefs around what we can and can't do. I'm thinking about Jupiter and Leo and the feeling of scarcity and feeling not good enough that can come up when we don't trust and believe in ourselves. That's the friction I see between these two planets when they're in a square here. So these two things could be happening together. They could be totally separate, but there's kind of a lot to unpack this first week of July around what do I need to feel secure? What beliefs might I be harboring that are keeping me from feeling secure? And what new breakthroughs are coming through in what I'm learning, the conversations I'm having? What is that challenging within me? But also, what does that open up for me if I allow that idea to just kind of be present and teach me something? So this takes us into the next week where the major moments are the sun squaring Saturn. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the screen, and Venus entering Virgo. The sun squares Saturn on July 6th. This is a tough moment. It's a tough moment. It doesn't have to be the toughest moment by any means, but we know Saturn's in fall. Saturn's in an overcoming square. That means it has the upper hand, so to speak, with the sun. I've been thinking about Saturn in Aries as like Moses wandering in the desert, and I could be totally fucking this up because I am not a biblical scholar whatsoever. Was it even Moses that was in the desert? I don't know, but there's that story of the people in the desert. Yikes. Forgive me, I should have researched this, but it just kind of came to me that Saturn is an outsider. It's the experience of being exiled, of being weird, of being different. It's also time limits, boundaries, restrictions. In the sign of the spring equinox, Mars's sign, Aries, I think about the feeling of creating something brand new and how like no one might get it right away, right? And then you have the sun in Cancer, which is all about protection and nurturance and legacy and memory and safety and stability. So this feels like a vulnerable moment to me. We might be in our feelings around this time, and we might feel some fear around the new things that we're doing. We may feel like giving up. That this is kind of the energy I get from this square, that it's like, you know what, no one's going to get this. It's not working. It's too hard. I'm just going to give up. And if you need to do that for a hot second, I get it. Sometimes you need to just lay it all down and breathe and rest. That's not a bad idea for this particular moment, is to just kind of take a beat and rest and let things sort of integrate. But I also want to remind you that you don't need to give up completely, okay? Because this, like all things, is a moment in time. And this feeling I don't think is going to last. It's a momentary feeling of challenge and feeling perhaps like you're a little more vulnerable and a little more sensitive to other people's criticism and just feeling like your efforts are not working. Okay. So just keep that in mind around the beginning of the month, really through like the 9th. You don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But then our friend Venus is going to enter Virgo, and I'm going to do my best to not editorialize. I feel like one of the hardest things as an astrologer sometimes is to not put your own experience of the planets in your interpretations. Venus in Virgo, I will say though, just so you're not like, what the fuck is she talking about? It's challenging energy for me. I have people close to me with this energy, and my experience of it has been, Venus wants harmony. Venus wants to be in partnership, and Virgo wants to do it themselves. The person in my life who I'm closest to that has Venus in Virgo is known for saying, you've got to do it yourself because no one else is going to be able to do it right. It's all up to you, essentially, to make sure it's done right. And that is very much Venus in Virgo. And so you can see how that energy can feel really challenging, because when you insist on doing everything yourself, you're going to carry a heavy load. And we're, in fact, not meant to do everything ourselves. We're, in fact, meant to do it in partnership. That's why we're part of a human collective. And I really believe, and this might be my Libra rising talking, being a Venus person, that other people are crucial in our spiritual growth and development. There's a reason that we're doing this in a human collective, that we're doing life in a human collective. And so this is just something to think about as Venus is in Virgo. There's gifts to it as well, though. There's a way in which we can understand our self-criticism a little bit more while Venus is in Virgo. I think it's fascinating that Venus, immediately upon entering Virgo, will conjoin the South Node. I really like that. That feels to me like a moment of release for some of the ways in which we might be too critical, some of the ways in which we might isolate more than we need to, that we may come to know the ways that we resist help when it would be really useful to accept it and embrace it. Some of the gifts of Venus and Virgo, I think about healing and being able to understand the nuance and the intricacies, because we are in Mercury sign here, the nuance and the intricacies of what we need to feel good in our bodies. I'm thinking about this being an earth sign. And I think there's also a potential to develop a deeper relationship with ourselves. Just thinking about how individualistic Virgo energy is, and not in the negative way of having to do it all yourself. There is that, but there's also a way in which I think Venus and Virgo can be really good at cultivating a relationship with yourself if you can get past that critical lens that I think Virgo is really, really good at. If we can use that for good and not for evil, then that can be really profound and powerful. We can use this critical faculty that Virgo is so good at bringing forth to understand where we don't allow other people in, or what are the kind of minefields within us that make it hard to feel connected to ourselves. There's some healing that can happen while Venus is in Virgo, but we have to be willing to go there, and we have to be willing to critique our own critiquing, right? We have to be willing to almost engage in a dialogue with our critical faculty and get a little more objective with it. And in that way, we might be able to develop a deeper relationship with ourselves while Venus is in Virgo. So I'm hopeful that there's some healing that's coming through for us here. This takes us to Barbeau's basket, which I'm really excited to talk to you guys about. Now, what is Barbeau's basket? Mr. Barbeau was a French astrologer who correctly predicted things like the fall of the Berlin Wall, COVID, and one of the things that he pointed out in his predictions was this month, July 2026. He noticed that the outer planets were going to be configured in mostly a harmonious relationship. What we have, I'm going to put the screen back up. is a series of sextiles, okay, with an opposition. So let me show you. We've got Pluto sextiling Neptune. We've got Neptune sextiling Uranus. We've got Uranus sextiling Jupiter. And then we have Jupiter opposing Pluto. Okay. So as you can see, it kind of looks like a basket. And so we've been calling it Barbeau's basket. There's been a lot has been said about this and what it might mean for the collective. I'm going to link some things that you can read to go down that rabbit hole. I want to focus more on the personal astrology of the month here on this channel and in this video. But the big takeaway for me is Barbeau himself really said this was about structural change. Big structural change on the collective level. And again, this is not something that's going to happen overnight. With the outer planets, it's a process of unfolding, but this is the genesis. This is the starting point. Now, in terms of personally, you can see that all of the modalities are active here. Cardinal, right here, mutable, and fixed. And so everyone's going to be affected by this on some level, but especially if you have any planets at or around 4 degrees. And so if you have any planets around 4 degrees of any of the signs, this is affecting you. This is aspecting your birth chart. I've actually done 2 different talks already on some of the aspects happening within this. I did a talk on Jupiter opposite Pluto, as well as Uranus trine Pluto. I will link those in the show notes as well, so you can go deeper on those because, I mean, there's like 5 different traits that's going on here, right? It's really a lot to unpack personally, but I think the main thing is it all kind of comes back to Jupiter. Jupiter is the fastest moving planet of these planets, and Jupiter is also the planet that's engaged in the opposition with Pluto. So it feels to me like if we focus on what's going on with Jupiter, that might be where we see this playing out the most in our personal lives. I think as a whole, we're looking at those paradigm shifts that I talked about. Because what is Pluto? Transformation, secrets and repressed material coming to the surface, alchemy. Jupiter is our philosophies, our values, our spirituality. I talked about Jupiter and Leo reminding me of both the righteous gemstones, like this kind of Billy Graham evangelist type of person, as well as something like the teacher in Dead Poet Society. I can't remember his name now, but Robin Williams' character. It's some kind of figure or person who's very charismatic and is also coming forward in a way that's totally authentic, but not always well received. This is getting into the nuance of the first decan of Leo, which is co-ruled by Saturn and the Sun. The first 9 degrees and 59 arc minutes of Leo are a lot about the vulnerability of being authentic, being willing to put yourself in the spotlight and face the fear of possible rejection. Well, in an opposition to Pluto, it feels like we're really alchemizing something around that. And then that takes me back to the square that we experienced at the beginning of the month between Jupiter and Chiron. That we started the month with this awareness of fear, perhaps, around, will I be well received? Do I have what I need to feel safe and to truly let the world see who I am and to share my ideas freely? We might be working through that this month. And then I see this moment, this opposition, as a really important point in that story where we kind of see the deeper thing going on here, the deeper, I don't know, beliefs or fears possibly that have been fueling any feelings of scarcity and I'm not good enough and they're not going to like it. We're really working through our limitations around being seen authentically and the vulnerability that's required of being authentic, I think, with this transit on a personal level. And then I think about Jupiter trining Neptune. It feels transcendent. It feels spiritual. It feels unifying. It feels like a relief, like getting into a warm bath at the end of the day. There's something about it that's like very revitalizing and rejuvenating, but also unifying. Jupiter is unifying and Neptune is unifying, but in different ways. Neptune's very spiritual and transcendent, whereas, and it can be foggy too. Let's not get it twisted. Like all of the planets can show up in light and shadow, but because we're talking about a trine, it does feel like there's this synergy of unification happening here, and it's spiritual, it's deep. We already know it's deep because Pluto's involved, but there's something spiritual about it because Neptune and Jupiter are implicated and they're working together. It's giving great awakening, the fiery aspect of it here. It's fire and brimstone, but we're at a revival. It's not the scary Jonathan Edwards sinners in the hands of an angry God. It's like, God is love, open your heart, receive the blessings of spirit just by like being open and present and trusting. I feel like it's a lot about trusting your vision, trusting your heart. There's Leo again, right? Having the courage. Leo is so much about courage. Courage is really about heart strength. You may not know, but you might know that the root word of courage is the French core, which is about your heart. And so there's something about trusting the desires of our heart around this time, alchemizing fear around the vulnerability that is required to do that. And then if we think about the sextile between Jupiter and Uranus, first of all, it's harkening back to the Mars-Uranus conjunction. So again, that first week of July, it feels to me like this is a continuation of what comes up in the first week of July, especially because Mercury will be stationing direct very soon, the 23rd. So very shortly after this all kind of perfects. But anyway, the sextile between Jupiter and Uranus, it's groundbreaking. It's a new paradigm. This is where we come full circle back to the idea that July is about retooling our reality. It's really changing the way we see everything. It's shifting our focus and shifting our perspective. And it definitely feels, when I think about Uranus, like a big clearing energy. Like we are just taking it all off the table. Everything that's been piled up, we're clearing the table. And now there's a clarity that comes with that, right? Where we're no longer beholden to the old rules and the old ways of doing things, because Uranus is in Gemini. I would not be surprised if this is literally another person coming in and shaking you awake somehow. And Jupiter can be a teacher figure too. So on a mundane level, I think about a new figure coming out of the woodwork. Maybe not a totally brand new figure, but there's someone who steps up and is like, all right, this is what we're doing now. Here's this brand new way of thinking about things. And it's a philosophy that catches fire. We're talking about Jupiter and Neptune in fire signs. It feels like there's this almost rapturous audience waiting to hear these ideas, and they're very different. We are talking about Uranus being involved here. So there's an idea that this is like revolutionary, brand new way of thinking. And it may feel pretty foreign and almost weird. And it may be like activating for people, right? It may activate someone's fears to hear this philosophy. And it might be that you have the philosophy, like you have a thing that you want to say and you're trying to share it and teach it. And you're worried about how it will be received. And it might bring some things up for people. But at the same time, there's this, I'm thinking about the judgment card in tarot of like, we're all just kind of like, yes, right, opening your arms to it, receiving it. And there's an alchemy in this, that this new idea, this new philosophy, this brand new way of looking at and seeing the world, whatever it is, it's dramatically changing everything about the way we see the world. It's changing our philosophies. Hello, Jupiter. And because we're talking about mostly harmonious aspects, it's as if all of the planets are linking arm in arm and they're like, all right, we're going to make this happen now. There's a way in which this change and this shift is going to happen with more ease because the outer planets, except for this opposition, are working in a harmonious relationship to one another. Okay. So that's the basket. There's so much to say about it. And I think it's going to mostly show up on a mundane level, as I said, unless you have planets, let's say between 1 degrees and 7 degrees of any of the signs. Okay. If you do, then this is affecting you personally on a personal level as well. So this takes us to the last major moment of the month, and this is the Jupiter Cazimi. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the screen for us. So here we are at 6 degrees, 24 arc minutes of Leo. Again, this is a rejuvenation. This is a refresh. I should also say, I didn't have it on my almanac, but the nodes moving and changing signs, that is also a big deal. We now have the nodes in fixed signs, Leo and Aquarius. So Leo and Aquarius placements, this is a bigger deal for you. And really, if you have any placements in fixed signs, I would say you're getting the most juice from this month. But truly, everyone, there's something for everyone in July. But anyway, this Cazimi, we know that anytime the sun conjoins a planet, this is a special conjunction where the other planet involved is getting a solar renewal. It's as if the planet is right next to the sun in its throne as the king of the zodiac, and it has special powers as a result. The sun is also the co-ruler of the first decan of Leo. I keep bringing this up, but it feels important to say here because the sun is both at home and in a decan that it is in charge of. And so this feels like a rebirth and a crystallizing of the shakeups that have happened over the course of the month. We started July with this recognition of a new idea trying to come through, a sort of irritating and maybe inconvenient reality that's coming up, Mars and Uranus, as well as the friction that comes from the square of Jupiter and Chiron. Like, what do I need to feel safe and secure? And why don't I feel safe and secure to be myself and to embrace my authenticity? What is it about my paradigm and my beliefs that's stopping me from feeling safe and secure? And I think the rest of the astrology of July helps us understand that on a deeper level, especially the basket configuration. And then by the time we get to this Cazimi, there is a new seed planted. There is some kind of crystal clarity for me around, like, all right, well, this is what I believe now. Now that all this has happened, now that all of my worldviews and paradigms have been shook up like a snow globe, the dust is kind of starting to settle, and here's what I think now. Here's what I'm focused on now. Here's how I see things now. And here's who I'm wanting to show up as now. And when I say show up as, it's less about like choosing your identity. You know, that might be more of a horoscope thing. Like Leo risings, yes, definitely. This might be how it shows up for you. But I mean like the foundational things about you, your beliefs, your values, your paradigms, they have changed by the end of the month. And you are more clear on what they are by the time we get to the Cazimi. And so those new sets of values, beliefs, paradigms, they are crystallized now. And you can move forward and embody your integrity in an easier way as a result, because now you've got this clarity around what you really think, feel, and believe. It is really fascinating as well. You might have noticed the moon is at 5 degrees, the sun is at 6 degrees. So this Cazimi perfects hours before the full moon in Aquarius. So absolutely, this is toning the full moon here. And fascinatingly, the next lunation, the next lunar event, the next new moon is an eclipse. It's an eclipse in Leo. I'm going to actually just show it to you really quick. Oops. Let's go back to, oh lordy, sorry. Okay, August 12th at 20 degrees Leo with Jupiter in the mix right here. So we'll talk more about the eclipses when we get closer to that, but I basically just wanted to show you that, hold on, let me go back to July 29th. So there you can see the Cazimi still essentially in effect, as far as I'm concerned, at the time of the new moon perfecting. The moon's very close to Pluto. This full moon is setting us up for the eclipses, and it's picking up on the basket configuration because we have Pluto activated as well in this full moon. We know a full moon is a moment of release. So it's as if we get this crystallized knowledge and this crystallized understanding. I always talk about Jupiter as like a connect the dots picture in the coloring books from when we were kids. Jupiter can see how the dots connect. And so this feels like a moment where we understand how the dots connect for us and our authentic expression and who we came here to be as souls having a human experience, and then apply that to whatever house Leo occupies in your chart, right? So just as an example, this chart has Virgo on the ascendant, Leo in the 12th. It would be about the ways in which maybe you hold yourself back or isolate and the beliefs around that. And it could also be about spirituality and your psyche and just the beliefs that are running your life that you never really saw or noticed coming to the surface more. And you're kind of making a conscious choice now at this point about what you want to carry forward and what you don't want to carry forward. So you take this idea of paradigms crystallizing and apply it to whatever house topics are activated for you when planets are in Leo. But again, Pluto and the moon being here, it's really picking up on what was going on about 7 days prior to this full moon with the basket configuration. What are we purging? What are we alchemizing? What are we clearing? What are we letting go of? It's a full moon, right? And then by the time we get to the next new moon on the 12th of August, it's a new moon in Leo. So that feels like it's really like, all right, we're going, we're doing it, we're taking a risk, we're betting on ourselves, and we're not looking back. So July gets busy, and really what I think it's doing is giving us, like I said, this reset in our worldviews and our paradigms that's going to allow us to make the big moves that eclipse season will start to facilitate. I think by the time we get to the end of August, we're going to have some balls rolling that are quite different maybe than what we expected at this point in the year. We're going to see things much differently than we had seen them previously. And we're going to be in a position to be more of ourselves, to let the world see who we truly are, to trust ourselves, to trust our spiritual path, and to not let fear get so in the way of that. That's my greatest hope, anyway. A lot to say, and I hope it was helpful. Drop your questions in the comments. I know there's so much to unpack with this, and I would also love to hear your insights. So if you're watching this later in the month, or even after the month has passed, come back to this video and let me know how this all shows up for you. I'm really interested to see what plays out on the world stage and also how it shows up for you personally. I think we learned so much from understanding how the astrology shows up for us in our personal lives. It really teaches us a lot about astrology as well as about our own selves in the process. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, you can find out more about how to work with me. I offer readings. I have obviously my astrology almanac that I showed you. I'll link that down below. And I have several other ways you can work with me too. So you can find out all about that in the show notes. In the meantime, happy July. We've made it to the halfway mark of 2026 and we're just getting started. We're just getting started, guys. It's going to be great. So I wish you nothing but love, peace, joy, and ease. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye.